So again, welcome. And I just want to appreciate right out of the gate, Aaron Burrows for coordinating this and putting together the slide deck and being the brains behind the machine here that makes things like this happen. We're always eternally grateful to Aaron up in the Seattle area for all she brings to this. So I want to first say welcome, and I want to just appreciate also, this is Aaron's labor as well as the labor of the steering committee of the Place-Based Justice Network, that the results of the 2021 membership drive resulted in 36 institutional members. Aaron has a map of that we're going to take a look at, whether across the nation. And so I want to welcome those of you who are new to the network, and then some of you have been a part of our organization on our network for a while. So it's good to see familiar faces here, faces I know from other parts of my career and other paths in my career, as well as new folks. So I want to say a little bit, and then I'll invite you to respond in the chat with your thoughts about this, about what compels me to do faith-based community engaged work. And I can say that for myself, I've worked in the field since 98. And initially my entry point was teaching service learning courses. But place-based work really compels me because it's a place where thinking about public service and public scholarship gets broadened beyond the classroom, and we can think systemically as members of institutions and members of communities come together to think about how do we leverage the resources from multiple places to engage in a shared vision of a more just world, right? And so I think there's value, and it's meaningful for me to engage with community engaged learning courses still when I have the opportunity to do that. But I would say that sort of a systems-based approach for me is what emerges from doing place-based work. So I'm curious what brings you here today, whether that's your relationship to place-based work, whether that's what compels you to do the work writ large as you define it or as it appears in your life now. And that could be professionally as well as personally. So if you don't mind posting in the chat some thoughts. I know it's a big question. And so we'll have some grace for each other, because we can't boil our entire essence and relationship to this work down to a chat necessarily, but it's an invitation to connect with each other and introduce yourself and say a little bit about what brings you here. So if you don't mind taking a minute. I know it's Friday, folks are ready for the weekend. Thank you, of Creighton. I appreciate folks also adding, to your names if you have time, where you're coming from. That lets us know where folks are located throughout the country. Energized by sustaining and creating connections and breaking down artificial barriers between the university and the community. I think that resonates certainly with me, and I imagine with others. Those actual physical walls, we all know institutions, and we may work at them that have physical walls, or the imagined between campus and community. So if folks are invited to continue to share what compels you to do this work, and we'll just keep going with our agenda for a second. Thank you. There we go. Authentic relationships with colleagues, doing the hard heart work, sustained engagement, and anti-oppression work. Thank you. I appreciate it. I know it takes a second to type. I appreciate folks coming in from the DEI branch of the institution and joining the network and bringing that in, lensing, because it really is forward in our values and our vision. Real world impacts, justice to spaces where underrepresented populations need voices. I've always appreciated that we get a range of professionals doing work with different spheres of influence in this network, right? I see VPs in the chat. I know there's practitioners who are on the ground or in the classroom as part of the network too. So I just really appreciate how we come together and can talk honestly about what are our spheres of influence around doing this work and how do we move institutions forward at times to understand, as it's put here by Fran, the urgency of the work toward a more just and equitable world. Healthy and just democracy. This is great. This is a beautiful chat. I just really appreciate all of you talking about the meaning that this work has for you, and because I think it reflects what you bring to it as well. Lori in Portland saying, drawn to the intentionality of this work and how it focuses on anti-oppression, and grateful for the network as a space that provides ongoing learning from amazing colleagues. Thank you. So today we have a few things on the agenda. We're going to be moving through, and we'll be have time for chat or discussion by quarter past the hour, so within a half an hour or so. So we're going to talk a little bit about the history of the network, the purpose and values, where we'll turn to our colleague Fran in Seattle for that, and then program offerings, and Aaron Burrows will take us through that. So I'll jump in a little bit on the history, and then after Fran, I'll say a little bit about what members get out of the network as well. So in 2014, teams of 12 universities gathered at Seattle U for a 2-day institute to create a community-inspired definition of place-based work. I want to, in particular, recognize the work of Seattle U and the place-based work that they've been doing for years, because some of what happened and brought folks together in 2014 was folks kept going to Seattle U and saying, what are you doing? I need to understand your model. And I think there are some folks on this call, myself included, who flew up and said, we want to understand this, like, how are you thinking about it? And so it became clear there was energy nationally around this and a need for a place to gather folks to be intentional about creating a definition for this work. So then 25 folks participated in multi-day institutes, and we're grateful to Seattle U and the Annie Casey Foundation for supporting those between 2015 and 2017. And some of the Casey Foundation support has continued on since then. And then in 2018, many of us clarified the purpose and the structure of what has become known as PBJN. So we crafted a name. We decided on PBJN partially because PBJ is kind of fun to have as part of a network, but also we got really clear on the anti-oppressive lens that we're bringing to the work. And that was in part because many of us as professionals saw bits and pieces of that conversation nationally, but not a place where there was a coherent whole about naming, how do we talk about bringing an anti-oppressive lens to our work very intentionally in place-based work and commitment to working in and with community. So I'll hand it off to Fran to talk a little bit more about purpose and values.
Thank you, Karin. Hello, everybody. My name is Fran Lowe. I use she, her pronouns, and I am calling in from Seattle, Washington at the University of Washington. I serve as the Executive Director of our Community Engagement and Leadership Education Center. And I'm a newer member to the Place-Based Justice Network, and really honored to be serving on the steering committee this year, and just super excited to build this community and meet all of you. So I wanted to just share our purpose of the network and some of the values. I invite you to read along with me, and even if you would like to close your eyes and just hear the words. I personally was really drawn to the intentional purpose and the stated values of this network, which really drew me to really invest time and energy with this. There's so many amazing organizations out there to be involved in, and I think that the commitment of the Place-Based Justice Network in this purpose of, we are a learning community committed to transforming higher education in our communities by deconstructing systems of oppression through place-based community engagement. I'm just going to read this one more time because I think this is just a powerful purpose statement. We're a learning community committed to transforming higher education and our communities by deconstructing systems of oppression through place-based community engagement. So when we look at our values, I want to read these to you, and then we're going to invite you all to connect with each other in small breakout rooms to center yourselves around these values. So Our first value is that we are committed to an anti-oppression framework that recognizes intersectionality. We pursue partnerships and initiatives that are long-term, reciprocal, and grounded in a deliberative process. We emphasize actions that are defined by community-identified goals that foster self-determination. We recognize that change occurs through continuous individual and collective learning and action. And we honor that this work involves openness, integrity, and humility. So I find so much power in these values, and we're going to invite you to get into small groups and introduce yourselves to one another, meet one another in this network. And our prompt to you is, for today, what is most resonating with you in the values? So we'll spend maybe about 7 minutes in small groups. So, and I think Erin will.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm going to say a little bit about what members get out of this. I appreciate you going into small groups and getting to connect across institutions there for a bit. So the big picture, you know, we think of influencing the field of higher education and place-based community engagement. So we're nothing if not ambitious, because we are interested in taking those values that we were just discussing in the vision and foregrounding that within the field, right? So that means showing up in places with questions like, how are we going to address systemic oppression and how we manifest that in our relationships between institutions and communities, right? How do we deal with the legacy of colonization and higher education? I'm at a Jesuit institution. That conversation doesn't actually happen where I work. It's happened at other Jesuit institutions. And so I'm grateful for examples to point to around that kind of reckoning. But I mean, you know, I think, you know, influence is a big statement, and it's an aspirational one. I personally am truly grateful about being able to build my network and foster connections with folks who are new friends and old friends. There are folks also in this call who've joined the network who I've known for easily 15 years, and we'll get to connect in new ways through the network potentially. We really invite shared governance. You're invited, and you'll get, well, by the end of this, you'll have another invitation to join a subcommittee, should you be interested. I think we think of national anti-oppression movements by putting values into action. So it's not unusual for us to have conversations within the network where we talk about, are we drawn more to the work of an organization like Color Lines or the Race Forward Conference, or are we trying to influence something like IRSlice, which is a perhaps more traditional service learning community engagement organization that's been around for a couple decades. So I think there are different points of entry and different, getting back to the phrase spheres of influence for us around contributing to national anti-oppression movements. by living out our values. And again, the subcommittees are a great place to engage in those conversations, whether that's about national work, whether it's about member engagement, and we'll say a little bit more of that toward the end. And I can certainly say for me personally, the network has been incredibly renewing. I've been a long-term member and involved for years. And I think it for me has been the most consistent space to bring the questions that I have about the work. And I'm someone who, again, I started teaching service learning at CSU Monterey Bay back in '98, where the course was service learning with diverse communities, and multicultural service learning with diverse communities. So just to date it, we don't even use the language of multiculturalism so much anymore. And the Place-Based Justice Network has been a place to bring the questions that to me will never be answered. So there are gray areas and there are tensions in this work that for me will never be answered. And I've always wanted a place to show up and say, what about this? Or how do we do this? How do we reckon with these questions? Like what I just mentioned, the history of colonization and Jesuit institutions and doing place-based work. Like sometimes it's like, should we even be doing this? And I have worked places where I'm told I can't say those things. And so that's not the case where I am now. That's earlier in my career and not Monterey Bay either. I don't want to throw them any shade on that because we could talk about it there. But I need places to wrestle with that. And that gets at the value of integrity, I think, and humility, right? Because this work, if you're paying attention, will humble you on any given day when you least expect it. So for that, I'm grateful because the network is a place with colleagues I can bring those questions. So I'm curious what some of the benefits are that you might be looking for in the network. Like I shared mine, but you might be thinking of other things that are meaningful for you. There are a lot of professional networks that do campus community work. I've named a few of them and more exist beyond that. Does anyone have anything that they could share in the chat or unmute yourself and pop in and share to get other voices in the room? So the question is, what are some benefits you are looking for in this network? Anyone?
One thing I'm looking forward to is the shared resources and best practices so that I can figure out how to, I'm new in role, so figuring out some ways that I can be impactful in my new role from some of the people who have had great successes in it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And we look forward to your contributions as well, right? Showing up eager to learn. And also undoubtedly, we're gonna hear about where you're at with the work and what's happening at Loyola. So thank you. And is it Davion?
That's perfect, Davion.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Karen, I think some of the things that you shared really resonated with me. I'm Lori at the University of Portland. I think also I really appreciate that this is a place, a community where you can be really vulnerable about your challenges and you can really seek support from colleagues about the stuff that you might not be able to talk with people on your campus and get some advice from different perspectives that can really help guide moving this work forward. So I'm grateful for and looking forward to tapping into that network even more.
Thanks, Lori. Glad you're here. Anyone else?
Hi. Again, thanks for your comments and for the other interventions thus far. One of the things that I think the network is sort of if I could put it this way, a microcosm of, and that is, thinking largely about coalition building, right? And how can coalitions change the moral narrative, that can change the character and the direction in which the wind is blowing, right? To speak metaphorically. So that's one of the attractions for myself, and I think I could speak for other colleagues as well. And in drawing on the resources of individuals and institutions who have had good success in various ways, I think it's also beneficial to all who are members. But that coalition building, right, I think is central, right? So thank you.
Thanks, Ernest. I love that. And I'm actually touched by the vision of coalition building that you've put forth, because I think it's accurate and it's aspirational. And it draws upon a long legacy of justice work too, by naming that and calling that into this place. So I actually find that really moving right now. So I want to make sure that we have time, unless, is there anyone else burning? We've got something to share.
Karen, I'm going to talk in a second about the membership offerings, but I did want to respond to this real quick. Like for me, I entered this network in 2017 before Gonzaga launched their place-based initiative. So we were very much in we are getting ready to do this work formally. We've been doing parts of this work informally for some time. How do we kind of like codify and learn best practices and in those pieces? I think that's true, right? The place-based part of this network is like very intentional, and we get to share like really wonderful things happening across the country. But then the justice part for me, I think animates this network in a really wonderful way. And I'm a part of a lot of different networks related to this work, these fields. And this feels to me like one of the most animated, one of the most like on fire networks. And Ernest, to your point, like at the Summer Institute, Nadine Cruz talked to us and did a keynote with us. And one of the things she mentioned was like how we think of ourselves as movement work and as a larger movement. And I don't think you always feel that in all the different networks. They all have their places and their benefits. But like from this network, it's where I draw most of my energy in doing this work and doing this work well. So anyway, I wanted to just share that.
Thanks, Anthony. And that's a beautiful segue to you and Aaron talking about specific program offerings. So I'll hand the floor over to you now. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, and thank you, Karen. Thanks, everybody. And Aaron Burrows and I are going to share a little bit. I think I'm going to share most of it, and Aaron's going to make sure I'm getting it right, as she always does. So hi, everybody. My name is Anthony Medina. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the Assistant Director at the Center for Community Engagement at Gonzaga University. In this context today, I'm joining y'all as a member of the Steering Committee for PBJN and a Next Generation Fellow. So thanks for joining us today. And I wanted to share a few offerings our network will be putting out this year and ways for y'all to get involved. The first that I wanted to bring our attention to is our peer coaching salons, our place-based justice network salons. And so these salons are meant to continue our learning in the breaks between summer institutes and winter leader retreats. And our purpose statement as a network mentions that we're a learning community with a set of common aspirations and goals. And so as a learning community, we gather to advance our individual and our collective knowledge to do justice in our specific contexts. These used to be called continuous learning sessions. They were Zoom sessions around specific topics. We're kind of shifting a little bit of what that looks like this year. We've had this really great definition of a salon that I love. And it reads, a salon is a gathering of people where they amuse one another and increase their knowledge through conversation. So I love that amusing piece. It's like, we're here, we're human, we're gonna be connecting on that human level. But through a really wonderful peer coaching model that Fran Lowe has introduced us to, and we're gonna try out for this first session, introduce you all to, we're really hoping to structure our salons in an interactive way that will engage our collective experience rather than like someone coming in with an expertise, right? Like we can come to these sessions with a challenge that's facing us, something that we're excited about doing, but want some guidance through or some critical feedback about. So we're really hoping these spaces are going to be more interactive in that way and less sage on a stage and more co-learning and co-creating together, right? Our first salon is going to be on October 27th. And we hope that this will be a great opportunity to build our PBJN community, learn about some salient issues our colleagues are grappling with, and harness some of our collective knowledge, right? So more to learn and be a part of on October 27th. The next thing I wanted to share, oh, at any point, if there's questions, raise your hand, I'll stop. I can talk forever, so slow me down. Our next offer we wanted to talk about was our Place-Based Justice Network Leadership Retreat on Friday, December 10th from 9:30 to 12:30 PST. We'll be holding our annual PBJN Leadership Retreat. This is going to be a 3-hour retreat held virtually and open to all members active on our working groups, which we'll have more information on in a little bit, and will be hosted via Zoom. It's an opportunity for us to come together and help shape the future work of this network. So usually held in person, but this year will be held virtually. The next piece I wanted to talk about was the Next Generation Fellowship. So starting in 2019, the Next Generation Fellowship, which was funded by the Annie Casey Foundation, was designed to assist emerging professionals of color in community engagement field in thinking critically about who they are, who they're called to become, and how they can find the support they need to reach their goals in this field. I was selected as one of the inaugural fellows in 2019. And if I could speak pretty candidly, like it's been one of the most meaningful experiences I've had in this field, and has given me so much confidence and like allowed me to be to show up in spaces in a different way because of the colleagues that I've had in that fellowship, and because of the conversations we're able to have, right? So I was selected in 2019. Through this fellowship, I've met some of my closest friends in the field, brilliant colleagues with heart and expertise that have helped shape my work, that have helped me feel supported in this field of community engagement, civic engagement. And we've had a chance to dive deep on issues facing people of color in our field and help push our network in critical ways. So what started as a fellowship, there are 2 cohorts so far, is kind of moving to this coalition space. And John Loggins and Julie Anderson from our network will be helping head up that coalition. So there'll be more information to come. But if you're interested in becoming involved in the Next Generation Fellowship Coalition, there'll be more information coming through our newsletter and ways to nominate folks on your campus and nominate yourself if you're interested. I'm seeing some questions in the chat. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. Anything coming through, Erin?
Just announcements reinforcing your brilliant sharing. Thank you.
Backing me up there with the tech. Our next piece is the Summer Institute 2022. So every year, the Place-Based Justice Network puts on a Summer Institute, and they're annual opportunities for colleagues to gather and share strategies, lessons learned, explore pressing questions about how to do the work of connecting campuses and communities in ways that align with our network values, right? Typically, we hold these gatherings in person. It's been a great chance to visit campuses and get a taste of their place-based work that they're doing. Got to go to USF a few years ago, got to go to Loyola Maryland and Baltimore, Seattle U. Oh my goodness. We went up to Minneapolis, Augsburg. It was incredible. It's been incredible gatherings. So really fun gatherings, but also very, very, very formative. And every gathering has included some framing from leaders in our field that embody the values of our work. This past summer, we hosted the Institute virtually, but we've typically tried to hold them in person. So we have some decisions to make on that, and more details about the Summer Institute are forthcoming, but please look out for that because it's one of our kind of like key gathering spaces as a whole network. Finally, I wanted to share that we will be putting out a monthly newsletter. By we, I mean Erin and the great folks at SALU, putting out a newsletter. We send out a monthly newsletter and occasional special announcements to our colleagues across the country. This is a place to share job opportunities, to share things that are happening in your work, things happening across the network. And you can access the archives of that network via email online. If you have an opportunity or a story that you'd like to be included, please send that our way and utilize our newsletter and our LinkedIn space to share things happening in your world. Beyond just the opportunities that are happening, which is wonderful to share, we really want these spaces, the the LinkedIn, our newsletter, to be places to capture stories, to help inspire us in the network, to capture those pieces, to be able to share that work more broadly and lift up and celebrate how we're able to engage in place-based work. So as you have those stories, those pieces, maybe you're doing it for your annual report anyway, share it over to us. We'd love to include that in the work that we're doing and help highlight our colleagues across the network. Wonderful. I think the last piece is that we're collecting interest forms for our various working groups. I believe the link is in the chat. If it's not, I can put it in the chat. But we do have a number of working groups, I think 12 different working groups this year, where y'all will have a chance to be part of co-creating this work with us. And so there's a variety of different ways you can get involved in the network. And those are kind of listed out on this form here. But ways that you can be part of the salons and planning the salons, part of the white affinity group spaces. Oh, I completely missed over that. Very sorry. Last thing I'll share. Our BIPOC healing circles and white affinity and accountability circles, right? So our last offering I want to mention, we provide healing circles, provide space for healing circles for people of color in our network who can gather with their peers and share experiences of internalized racism, gather for healing, and to work on liberation for BIPOC folks in our field. When we had these in person, they've been incredibly powerful spaces, and we've had some success having them online virtually too. So more information on those will be forthcoming as well. And then in kind of tandem with that, we've had a white affinity accountability circle that meets monthly with the intention of building community and supporting accountability to unlearn racism and build our capacity to incorporate anti-racist efforts into our place-based work. Meetings for those are also going to be forthcoming. They're not scheduled for the semester just yet, but more information on that will be coming as well. I've talked enough and my voice is a little raspy, so thanks y'all so much. Any questions, please raise your hand or let us know.
So we do have time built in for questions, comments, and ideas. Thank you, Anthony. That was really a beautiful overview and getting more concrete. I appreciate that. So we're opening the floor here for folks for questions, comments, or ideas before we wrap up. So no question too big, too small. We'll take a shot at it. Or yeah. You can just unmute yourself and jump in.
I have a question about the working groups. Is that what they're called?
Yeah.
Is it listed somewhere on the website, like who the leads are for the different working groups? Or because I saw the form, it didn't look like the form actually kind of says who's leading what.
Elaine, no, you're not publicly listed, but I'm happy to share that information with you, and I can update our website if that's of interest to other people. But each working group is led by different members of the steering committee. So that's how we're structured this year.
And the interest form will set into motion for the leads of those different working groups to reach out to you all and kind of connect afterwards, right? So it's not like fully signing up right away, right? There's an option to like express interest rather than like sign up immediately.
So, yeah, can you say a little bit more, like when you're talking about sustainability, are you talking about environmental, or are you talking about sustaining ourselves on our campuses? And what does member engagement mean, and what does national strategy mean?
I can jump in to talk about sustainability. Of course, we're always thinking about our pending climate crisis, but this is specifically about sustaining the network fiscally. Historically, the Annie E. Casey Foundation has underwritten all of our activities, our summer institutes, the Next Gen Fellows, a portion of my time. And so that funding has now sunsetted, and we're reliant on membership fees, and we're exploring individual giving and grants. And so it's specifically a group of leaders within the network to really think about the long-term financial health of the network. So if you or someone on your campus has a passion for advancement or development. I want to shout out Jessica Peasley, who's on this call from the Seattle U team. She's going to be helping us explore some grant opportunities that make sense for the network. And I'll let someone else speak to the other two pieces, the other two main working groups.
Yeah, I could share a little bit about member engagement. So member engagement are all the different offerings that we mentioned that connect with the various, all the members of our network. That sounds redundant, but this includes our salons. So if you're interested in helping co-create and plan our salons, that there's an opportunity there. Our leadership retreat planning, those retreats, have a good amount of work that goes on behind the scenes. So if you're interested in being part of that process, that's for the leadership retreat and for the summer retreat as well. Planning or facilitating BIPOC healing circles or white affinity spaces. Yeah, and so those are the member engagement aspects that you can kind of get involved in to help make this experience, deepen this experience for our members. Does someone want to talk to national strategy?
Yeah, and I'm a part of that group. So right now it's myself, John Loggins from San Diego, and Jen Britton out of Drexel, I think it is, right, Erin? She's out in Philly. And the specifics about that are what I was alluding to earlier, as far as a national strategy to influence the field related to anti-oppressive work and how to push forward conversations that encourage examining really power, privilege, and oppression, and how that manifests really inherently in place-based work and campus community engagement. So we're working on, what does this strategy mean? Like, does that mean we write articles? Does that mean we approach a journal about a focused issue, right? That would include a call for articles. Does it mean we try to map out who's presenting where on related topics? So we don't have a strategy yet. The group is to convene and start talking about that, and then call in members of the network to implement it. Right. So you could be a part of the planning committee, or you could also flag yourself and say, hey, this is where I'm at and what I'm doing already. So, keep me in mind as you advance that conversation. And thanks, Erin, for putting the names of the leads and the conveners in the chat. For those who are looking to map out, familiar faces that are a part of the network who are doing the convening and facilitating with these groups.
Thank you very much. That was so helpful.
Yeah, thanks for asking, Elaine. I think it's a good reminder of when you're inside building something, you think it makes sense, but I mean, national strategy for what, right? We need a lot of national strategies at this point in history. So what's, again, within our sphere of influence? So it's 10:20. Anybody else? There were questions in the chat, actually, before we started having that conversation, which was really rich and meaningful. Erin, I don't know if you had a chance to see those because you were also reporting out. There were questions about the summer gathering. Will it be virtual? Are the dates set, etc.? So sorry if you want to speak those, you may have answered in the chat as well already.
Yeah, Anthony, do you want to take a turn at that, or do you want me to?
I can share, and then you could correct me. And the Summer Institute right now is in planning, so it's very much being decided. I think there's a hope to be in person, but we're trying to assess a little bit. Even though we hope that next summer we'll be in a much better place with COVID, we also know that like the fallout of COVID has left a lot of our campuses with maybe strained resources, so to travel might be difficult. So I think we're trying to weigh those pieces, whether or not to hold it virtually or in person. I think our desire is to hold it in person, but we want to be realistic and responsive to our members as well. So more to come on that. That's kind of in process this month, this next 2 months.
Yeah, and if you want to be part of that discernment process, that's the membership engagement working group will make those decisions. We did do an assessment after our last Summer Institute 2021 and asked the question about preferences. And so there's data to draw from, but I'm sure we'll also be talking with folks. In terms of the actual dates, That's usually dependent on the capacity of the host institution if we're in person, or trying to find something that really works for the planning team, honestly, because there's many, conflicting vacations to negotiate when we're doing summer institutes. But last year we held it at the end of July, so it will likely be in July again.
And just to plant the seed for a bigger picture for those who've joined, right? Looking forward in years ahead, as Anthony said, when folks host the summer gathering, it is an opportunity to, showcase your work. We always have a walk in community or meetings with community partners, or a number of events where you go, to school site visits or et cetera, and as well as inviting long-term partners into the conversation. Sometimes that takes place as a panel or folks co-facilitating breakout groups. So it's just something to plant the seed for maybe it's 22, maybe it's beyond that, because yeah, and again, resources is related to the sustainability committee, but hosting it does include at least some in-kind contributions, but it's in my experience really meaningful to have host colleagues on campus for some of these conversations, and folks walk away with a greater understanding of both the institution as well as the communities surrounding that you work with.
Did I understand correctly that you're still looking for a partner for 2022, or has that been established yet?
If we do move to in-person, we'll be looking for a host site, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a couple people in mind, but we haven't actually made the formal ask.
And there's always 2023, Katie.
Sounds good.
And I did want to just shout out one resource, speaking of best practices and highlighting the collective wisdom of this group. The Summer Institute keynote core dialogues are up on our YouTube channel. Elaine provided one of those, for example, and really encourage people to go back and revisit that content. They're really incredibly rich. So I'm going to just drop that link in the chat as well.
Anyone else have any other questions or comments or things you're sitting with as you enter into the network or continue your relationship with the network? I'm fine sitting in silence as well. And I'm also happy to return 5 minutes to folks' lives as you're looking at making it through Friday to get your weekend started. So I just want to recognize we're all busy individuals, and sometimes a 7-minute bio break makes the difference in the day, right? Well, you know what? Maybe Aaron, Anthony, and I can hang out for a little bit. And so those of you who want to move on to the rest of your day can gracefully exit, and then we'll hang out if anybody wants to answer, ask any more questions. It's a pleasure to meet all of you and see old friends as well. And I'm really, truly excited that you've joined the network. So on behalf of the network and Anthony and Aaron, you can pipe in. We're really, really glad you're here. Thanks.